now we're going to take a look at what kind of information. So once you acquire image, what kind of information you can derive from it. And one of the approach is to use the image interpretation, and the other is using digital image processing. So today we're going to talk about photogrammetry interpretation. And that's defined by as the act of examining photogrammetry images for the purpose of identifying objects and judging their significance. So that will include, so how information extracted from image, that will include visual image interpretation and also semi-automatic processing by your computer, which means the digital image processing. So in this image here, so you have this image, stereo image, left and right side. So that is how a stereo image look like. And sometimes there will be also other things like a shadow of this tall building casted on the image. So, and also some side views. So you can see that depending where is your vantage point, and you may have side view of the object, tall object, and also shadow effect on the image. So that is the, and then also understand that when you use remote sensing sensors, you may have spectral bands that are way beyond your human eyes sensibility. So for example, this one here, you have the green reflectance of agriculture field, and then red, and then near infrared. And then when you have this color near infrared image, the red near infrared color composite, and that will show red as plant. And so on this image now, you can see that these bright red are those healthy, well-grown plants versus those black ones, usually somehow probably lack of irrigation or some other reason that is showing not healthy status. So as you can see that when you combine these different spectral bands, it provides much more information about the plants. And also remote sensing image or aerial photograph often used as historical image to document certain event or for change detection. For example, in this one over here shows the quickbird image in 2005 in April, and then one in June. So they see how a contrast of impact from a major disaster, okay? And usually when we look at an image, there are certain elements we try to look as a clue in the image to derive information. So these will include like XY location and your tone and color on the image. For example, if you use near infrared color composite, healthy plants will show red in your image. And also the size of the object include absolute size versus relative size, and shape, texture, pattern, shadow, height, depth, slope, aspect, or size situation. So we're going to take more illustration on these elements. So first, at the XY locations, a very simple example nowadays, when we talk about certain locations, I often like to search in Google Map, either using a name or location, so that I can see in the image, and that gives me a lot of information about the context. So the XYZ location of certain site, and also when we publish paper, we often provide these kind of study site and insert map to show where is your site is located. And then look at this image here. If I tell you this image is located on partly on the LSU campus, then what can you identify from the image, right? So you may be able to tell University Lake and Union and the grass field and the law school. Union should be here. Yeah, law school and other. And the Tiger Stadium, baseball and others. And the reason why you can identify these features is because I told you this image is around LSU. So then you can quickly register this image with the environment that you are familiar. So you can associate the image with what information you stored in your head. So that is one part of the useful information, how we do image interpretation. And then we can refer to the tone and color. For example, on this left image, the material in this left image showing this kind of shiny effect. This is typically indication of certain minerals. This looks like a money size. So it typically indicates certain minerals that have high reflectance, like a shiny reflective effect. And then the one in the middle show these kind of forest, and so you can see that there are different tree structure, but they show different color. So you know that these must be two different forest species. And also the agriculture, the irrigated system here. So the color contrast and tone contrast shows the comparison. So this tone and color refers to the average brightness of an area, or in the case of color image, to the dominant color of the region. So it typically depends on the nature of the surface in the angle of the observation and illumination, like this example here. And also smooth surfaces behave like specular reflectors. They tend to reflect radiation in a single direction, like with a dominant direction. And then rough surfaces, such as these kind of diffuse reflector, like especially forest crown, they function as the diffuse reflectors. So from tone and color, they can give you a lot of information. And so we can also observe color from different spectral bands, like green image, red, near infrared, and those using color composite. So you can see that different type of feature, water, they appear completely different. And so this kind of variety can help us identify features. And the other one is to look at size. So size refers to dimension of the features. So on this image, you will see that there are some relative size that usually determined by comparing the object with familiar nearby features. For example, obviously we see some residential in this image, in this area here, some railroad. On the other side, you have some relatively larger building with more parking size. So that already gives you a lot of information that you can interpret. And then the other one is to look at absolute size, refer to the use of area image to derive measurement. So I still remember maybe a decade ago, I heard a striking news example is that in that early stage, probably just China, when China was like reunited, and then China and Japan is still kind of like a kind of tense relationship. And then one of the news story is about on the newspaper, they have a news about Daqing oil plant, one of the major oil production in China. So they just had a news with a picture about something they report, but they have portion of the plant in the background. But the Japanese people were able to, just by looking at that picture, without scale and other things, they were able to roughly estimate what is the production from that plant, because that's kind of like nation security information. So they just look at the tank behind that person, will estimate the size of it, and then estimate how much of the plant may be able to produce. So how striking, just using like one normal picture on the news media, we're able to crack important information like that. So that is an example of using absolute size of the object to estimate the volume of the oil that can be stored in some tanks. And then shape. Shape refers to the outline of a feature. Like, for example, you can see the stadium over here, and they have a round shape, and the other building have a kind of square and rectangular shape. And these feature here some of them have rectangular shape, some have this kind of circular shape. The circular shape here usually indicate those the circular irrigation system, which before I come to the United States, I never see something like this until you get to know people, the practice people have in a different country. So it's important to understand that the shape typically depends on your perspective. For example, if you view from different angle, you may derive different kind of feature. Sometimes the shadow cast on the building can also give an indication of the shape of the object. And also overhead perspective introduce scale effect, okay? So that is related to the shape. So these are some example. Based on the shape, we can know, for example, we can easily identify, okay, this is the airplane because we see a lot of airplane like this. And then some of the mobile home, many of the developing or undeveloped countries, they are not familiar with this, but once we expose to this environment, and then we know that there are these are more likely those kind of mobile home or something like that. So I will know this is Pentagon in the United States, and then highway system and the river texture and the different tree species in the area. So shape give some very rich information about landscape, and we can associate that based on what we're familiar from our life experience. And texture refers to the variation in tone over a surface or the apparent roughness of the surface as seen in the photo. So it's usually created by micro shadows in small irregularities in the surface. So for example, here you can see that different tree and agriculture, they show different kind of texture. So texture is usually related to the alignment of the text. So, and also, for example, you have trees like this and water area and some grass around it. And when you see this kind of texture, typically this is probably those kind of logging practice, and this agriculture, the texture difference in this field indicating some, just in certain areas, especially in developing countries, they have a lot of practice because they have limited land. So people to work in it, so more labor intensive. So they often, before one plant is done, they often start planning for the other things. So in this one, you can see that at least 2 different plants were planted in this area. So this is also quite common in certain areas. And then this one here, the texture of different water area. So you will know that there might be something different planted in these different sections. And then this one here, the tree, the water, and the plants over here, they all show different kind of texture. So we know that they might represent different type of land cover. So these are some texture example. More likely on the image, you may see something like this, which is example of one, which is grain field, where they have this kind of smooth surface texture, and the evidence of this kind of human engineered plowing practice, like this kind of straight lines. So that indicate a grain field. And as a contrast, the scrubland is usually not frequently managed by the human. So the texture in this one is more kind of random. So less engineering sign in this kind of area. And also in this one, you may sometimes see these kind of mulching effect in farmland due to variable sediment types. So in the agriculture field, like mulching refers to this kind of texture that sometimes, so they show some texture of contrast difference. Sometimes some location brighter and some location much darker. So these could cause by the sediment type difference or the elevation difference, where low elevation could end up store more water, and then hence plants may grow taller than other area. Or sometimes it may be caused because of the barren site beneath the soil that cause plants not growing well. So this kind of like a mulching effect in farmland pretty frequent. And also different patterns. So pattern refers to distinctive arrangement of features, like this kind of pattern. So you see this airplane field, and also this one here looks like a farmland with different arrangement of the storage unit, and then the water river system have a completely different kind of pattern. And then also this motif effect here, the special pattern usually is more likely associated with the topography in the field. And the other one here shows the plant health issue. They show different kind of alignment and pattern than plant health condition. And also in city planning, different alignment may show in this kind of texture. So all these pattern examples, they gave good insight into the indication of land cover type as well. And this is another example on the aerial photograph. Sometimes you will see some pattern like this. It's normally an indication of certain mining or forest draining process. And this one over here. Or sometimes you may see feature like that. It could be like, could be residential. Some locations, they may be oil and gas extraction. So it depends. But here I want to show these kind of strange pattern, usually indicating certain, logging process or mining process. And on this image here shows, also certain pattern alignment. And this one over here shows the pattern for the airplane. So we're pretty familiar with that. These are the airplane locations because we are familiar with how airplane, the flight line may look like. So, and this one here shows kind of strip mining practice. A lot of information about training for aerial photo interpretation is having the experience, like exposure to a variety of different examples like this. And then next time when you see a feature like that, then you can identify it. Okay, so this is a strip mining practice. And this is example in agriculture field, where when you acquire high resolution image, then from the tree crown from top, then you can identify different plant species. Sometimes using high resolution band with only 3 or 4 bands, it's difficult to differentiate species, but you can further use these kind of texture, the alignment or crown structure assignment or pattern used to be able to visually identify the plants. And then another useful information will be shadow. So for example, there are two people standing over here, but based on the shadow, you can estimate. Sometimes you can use the shadow to estimate people height or some other things, relative size or height. And then this one over here, from the top view image, your building may look like. However, the shadow cast on the ground give you kind of vivid imagination about what the building may look like from these front locations. And also these highway systems, so these are the shadow, and this shadow structure like this are indicating the height of the object and other things. And in this case, for anthropology applications, the shadow here is often really critical for you to be able to strongly sense the 3D perception of the site. And the shadow from the residential buildings and trees and other features. And this also, the shadow along the river system sometimes indicate how steep the land is over there or others. So shadow can be existing in for example, this forest over here. When we do high resolution UAV mapping, we often encounter this kind of shadow effect. It will end up having to add a shadow layer to classify. Okay, so sometimes shadow can be quite useful. Sometimes they may cause problem that we need special treatment. And then this is example of the shadow where they, this is the The one with more shadow effect kind of enhance people's understanding of 3D perception. So in certain application, it is actually preferred. And this one over here shows a characteristic of an extremely useful small crater. They are illuminated in this Apollo 15 panoramic camera photograph of this crater. So as viewed from south. So look at this and try to imagine whether this is downward or upward, like a dome or like a, crater size, right? Sometimes it's kind of, so in this one here, it says to be a small crater. So it's probably like, like a bowl shape. But what I, look at all the other ones like that, what I sometimes find interesting is that sometimes if you have different people look at the image, are they kind of dome or crater? And then sometimes different people derive different perception. But anyway, so this is just some interesting perception. So interesting phenomena related to feature like this. And then the other one is to look at the height and depth. So in this one here shows the building height, the height of the building, the shadow kind of provide enhanced information about building height, and also here. So in many of the high-rise building area, shadow could be an issue because there's completely dark that often block the information in there. And also in this kind of topography, we can create a model to simulate the shadow effect. So it will be easier for us to see the 3D model, like more vivid, easier for us to interpret. So that is height and depth. And then site and situation and association. So a lot of time, besides those elements, sometimes we need to look for some other information that are often like more advanced skills related to site, situation, and association. So site, so site refers to a feature's position with respect to topography and drainage. So some things occupy a distinctive topographic position because of their function. For example, in a city, the sewage treatment facility usually at the lowest feasible topographic positions, or it used to be on the lower side, but then city may expand and they become in the relatively low, but still within the city element. But I mean, there is a historical effect on that. And also power plant located usually adjacent to water, because they often need large amount of water to cool the tower and then need to discharge it back into the river. So it's often located next to something else that they need. So in this example here shows the water treatment locations, and then usually on the lower side, and they have a feature like this and something nearby. And usually you will see that in the United States, there are some regulation not to have residential nearby. So typically you will see that on this side, these are some recreational place. On this side, more of industrial, and then this is the residential area. Okay, so these are some of the more in-depth knowledge. You have to like know that information to be able to understand the arrangement. And this is another example showing those kind of plants that next to the river system for convenience of shipping and storage. Okay. And this is another example how the nuclear power plant look like. So they typically associate with this kind of large cooling tower like this, the tower. Okay.